Welcome to part 8 on the Civil War. Now we're going to talk about Gettysburg. Robert E. Lee's second trip into the North didn't have the same strategic goals like he did when he went into Antietam. His forces were trying to really do two things. First, he was trying to get the fighting out of Northern Virginia because Northern Virginia had been ravaged with battles, right? And second, he was having supply issues. The South just couldn't keep up with the demands of supplying his army, and so his hope was by taking the fight back into the North that he would also be able to capture some Northern supplies, right? So he's going to slip into the North by going through the Shenandoah Valley and cutting across the narrow portion of Maryland. He's initially going to be pursued by General Thomas Hooker and then finally be chased by General George G. Meade into Pennsylvania. The two forces are going to find each other on July 1st, 1863, outside the Pennsylvania town of Gettysburg, right? What will ensue after this is a 3-day-long battle where Robert E. Lee is going to try and dislodge Meade's forces from the hills south of town. First, he's going to attack Meade's left flank at a place called Little Round Top. When that fails to move Meade's forces, he then is going to shift to the right flank, and he's going to attack him at Cemetery and Culp's Hill. Now, again, Meade is going to hold these positions. Now, since the left flank appears to be strong and the right flank appears to be strong, Lee is going to determine that clearly the middle is weak. And this is one of the rare times Lee is going to make a tactical error, because what Meade is actually doing is he's shifting his forces in this fishhook-shaped line that he has there. But he'll send on the third day General George Pickett across the center of the battle line, across a mile of open ground in what becomes known as Pickett's Charge. It's going to be a disaster. Pickett's men are going to be mowed down. As a matter of fact, during the retreat, Lee is going to command Pickett to try and cover their withdrawal, and Pickett's going to scream at Lee saying, "I have no men, you murdered them." Right? He's going to be very bitter about this. Ultimately, this is going to be the bloodiest battle of the entire war. Across those 3 days, you're going to have 51,112 casualties. Over 7,000 of them will be dead, 3,155 Union soldiers and 3,900 Confederate. There was so much dead and dying on the field of battle that the government is actually going to purchase the ground where the battle took place and convert it into a military cemetery in order to bury the dead, right? The cemetery will finally be dedicated on the 19th of November, 1863. And it'll be there on the 19th of November of 1863 at the dedication of the cemetery at Gettysburg that Abraham Lincoln is going to give probably his most famous speech, right? Ironically, he's not the lead speaker that day. He's the second guy, right? The main speaker that day was a political writer named Edward Everett. Edward Everett spoke for over 2 hours, trying to capture and describe the moment, right, in this dedication of this new cemetery. After he finished, Abraham Lincoln stood up and he gave his speech. And if you look here, that's pretty much half of it, just right here on the screen. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men were created equal. And he continues on for only 272 words, 2 minutes long. This is why this photo you see here is the only photo of Lincoln giving the speech. They had photographers who had been taking pictures of Edward Everett, and in his long speech, they all felt they had plenty of time in which to capture him, and so they felt the same was going to be true for the president. And so they were very quickly just trying to take what photos they could when his speech very quickly ended and he began to sit back down. But it really captured the moment. Matter of fact, the following day, Edward Everett sent a message to Lincoln that mused about this. It said, I should be glad if I could flatter myself that I came as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes. Lincoln, though, was pretty magnanimous in the way that he responded to it. He sent a message back to Edward Everett that said, "In our respective parts yesterday, you could not have been excused to make a short address, nor I a long one. I am pleased to know that in your judgment, the little that I did say was not entirely a failure. Yeah, clearly not.